Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Modern Customer Podcast. I'm your host, Blake Morgan, and today we have a repeat guest that's a lot of fun. Our guest is Henrik Werdelin. He is the founder of Bark, also founder of Audos and Prehype. Prehype is a venture studio that has made several startups. Audos finds and develops everyday entrepreneurs to build $1 million AI businesses. He has a podcast called Beyond the Prompt, all about AI. And he's here to talk about his exciting new book, Me, My Customer, and AI. Today, we're talking about how to use AI to do what people don't do well so they can focus on what they do best, connect authentically with customers. Henrik and I talk about use cases of customer experience, where CX leaders are having gaps when they think about AI, and the best way to engage customers using AI, in addition to so many use cases for customer-focused innovation. Please enjoy Henrik Werdelin. Henrik, welcome back. Third time on the Modern Customer Podcast. How's your day going today?
Going very well. Thanks for having me back.
Yes, I just love that you never stop innovating. Like you've had all these successes with companies and startups, and now you're back on like creating books and content on AI, and you have your own podcast. And I just love that you have so much energy.
I mean, I did take a little bit after Bark went public. I did take a little bit of time off, and then I got incredibly bored. And so I guess that's the curse of the restless mind.
It's good though. And I actually already started diving into your new book, which we'll get to, and I want to talk about that. But I mean, so much has changed in the last few years. You were already a technology entrepreneur before. Now we're facing this whole world where everyone is just scrambling to try and figure out what to do with AI. You were early to I mean, it's kind of scary to call yourself an AI expert when this all launched, but you really were. You even told me on the last episode of the show that we recorded, like, download ChatGPT, start using it, and just your attitude, like fearless about it. What's the number one question that people ask you about AI?
I guess one of them is if we're all going to lose our jobs. So I think that's probably high on people's mind. And I think the other question that I get asked a lot is like, I heard of everybody getting a lot out of AI, but like, what can I actually use it for myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember you would tell me you would record memos into Chat GPT when you're walking your dog, and like you had all these hacks for how you would use it to create efficiencies in your life, which I thought was just something, it was something I hadn't thought of. Are you still like continuing to hack your lifestyle and your life with GPT technologies and AI?
Absolutely. I mean, like now, I think most things that I do in my life run through that. And I think now, like my nerdy obsession is basically to create small pieces of software that will make my cell more efficient. And so, the other day I got on Replit, I made a little piece of software that basically read all my newsletters every morning, and then it summarized them in a way that I enjoy. And then I put in like what my priority is for that quarter, and it kind of looks all these at these newsletters and kind of highlight the thing that's most important for me. So I've now built like all these like software tools around it that hopefully makes me even more efficient.
Well, I love that you're an example of someone that clearly like hasn't lost the job because of AI. You're using it to supplement your life, your business, and that's really the I think the best view of AI is, hey, this thing is here, but it can actually help us be more productive and make a very dysfunctional business and tech world and society like more functional. Like let's be hyper functioning.
Yeah, and I like the word resourcefulness. I think one of the things we talk a lot about with AI is like efficiency. And efficiency for me is very much like a factory terms, right? Like where it's all about just, doing the nuts and bolts a little bit faster. I think what's nice with AI, in my perspective, is that there's all these things that I kind of knew a little bit of, but I didn't really know how to do, like design and code and all these other things. And now, purely by being able to describe what I kind of have going on in my mind, I can now have AI help me actually do it. And so it doesn't just makes me faster, it also gives me the ability to make many more things that I couldn't do before.
It's really useful for literally everything, everything, travel, healthcare, style. Like even you hear it's been being used a lot, even as therapy for, I heard recently it was like the number one question was like a marriage question or like a relationship question that people are using it for therapy. What do you think
One
about that?
You know what? I mean, I have a coach that I very much like, but I have made a version of him, a digital Alex, and I definitely kind of ask that questions when I'm not in sessions, but I still like want to like then verify them with him. I think one of the
Yeah.
things that I actually start to think about now that I used it so much is like, how do I need to, what are the areas where I should be careful and not just becoming lazy? Like I don't really know how to read a map anymore because I just use Google Maps for everything, right? And so I've been a little bit thinking about like what are some of the things that kind of is uniquely human or unique to me that I should kind of be worried about losing by simply just kind of talking to GPT and then sending off whatever it spits out.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get too lazy. And I did like, I think yesterday or the day before, you put up a LinkedIn post. It was very thoughtful. It was about like the type of person you want to be. I think it's been your birthday recently. There was some inspiration. And when you do see these thoughtful moments with people, they mean even more because obviously a lot of us are using AI to create content. So when something is uniquely human, we're all like, wow, that's so thoughtful and meaningful.
Yeah, I think that uniquely human is really interesting. And I think maybe back to the question of like, will we lose our jobs? I do think there's a lot of things that remains deeply human. I read this book the other day called Sense Making. It's an old book about big data by Christian Masberg. And he talks about the difference between thin data and thick data. And he refers to thick data as something that we as humans understand. For example, the mood in the office is a little bit off, or the party is just getting started. Like these are phrases that we as humans completely compute what means. But if you ask like either an AI or big data to kind of explain what it is, then it'll be difficult for it to put the data points towards it.
Absolutely. I love that. I think it'll be interesting to see how we as a species evolve now that we have technology to take care of this low-hanging fruit. Like, how will the human element of being human like grow and expand? But let's get to your book because we have a lot to cover today. I actually saw your book title a while ago and I was really excited about it because obviously it's customer experience focused. It also has entrepreneurship innovation. It's called Me, My Customer, and AI, like fantastic title. Why did you think that people need this topic? Like why did you bring this book into the world?
Well, there's kind of three things that my co-author and I have been obsessing about over the last few years. And that is, firstly, that there's a new type of entrepreneur that is emerging, we feel. We call it the everyday entrepreneur. And it's really the 60% of Americans that say they would like to start something, but only 9% goes out and do something. And so we think AI will enable a lot more people to go out and kind of live that dream. And so we wanted to write something that will help people like that figure out how to get going.
There's one line I really liked in your book, your definition of entrepreneurship. That entrepreneurship is the impulse to bring something into existence that wasn't there before in service of an actual or would be customer. I love that. I think innovation and customer experience are so closely linked. How can we use AI to be in service to the customer?
Well, I think one of the things that pretty unique with at least my flavor on entrepreneurship is that I think there's different pedagogies of entrepreneurship, and we often don't put words to it. We just assume that all entrepreneurship is kind of equal and even. And I think there's many different flavors, and there should be. The flavor that I really enjoy is where you start not with a technology or market size, but you start with a customer that you really truly care about. And then you figure out what is a problem that is really meaningful for that customer. And sometimes the customer can be yourself. And so if you anchor a business as in basically a customer and their problem, then you can create a different type of business than if you're anchoring yourself in the utility you provide. So for example, with BarkBox, we are a company that makes dogs happy and the people who love them. We're not a stuff in a box business. So when we launched our next business line, it wasn't a cat box or a reptile box because our business isn't to put stuff in box. Our next line of business was an airline because we're trying to make dogs happy, and what makes them more happy than traveling with their owners.
Yeah, we've started braving just like throwing our dogs in the car when we go somewhere and taking them with because now I think after COVID especially like you can literally travel with your dogs almost anywhere and I love that. Let's go back to some of the staples of AI. I talked to a lot of CX leaders, customer experience leaders. They really are a bit overwhelmed. They feel like AI is moving faster than they can create policies around it, especially as it relates to customer data, customer experience, employee experience. Do you have any good advice for customer experience leaders that know AI can make customers and employees' lives easier and better, but they don't really know the right approach or where to start?
Well, at least I'll give them a framework of how to think about it. We, in the book, outlined something we call relationship capital. And so part of the thesis of the book is what's going to happen is we pose the question, what's going to happen when everybody can make everything? How are you going to stand out? What's your mode? And we believe that one of the most important modes is going to be this thing we call relationship capital, which is really the strength of the relationship between the customer and the founder or the customer and the business. And so we have these three layers we look at. And I think what's interesting for what a CX person can do is to become better of finding honestly measurements of how to track how good they are doing these things so that they can report it up the line. And it's something that kind of everybody feel comfortable to become better and better of. So the first area that we look at something we call depth, which is basically how much does a customer feel seen? And there's different ways that you can kind of measure that. A good small indication is how quickly do you answer your customer, right? Like a lot of CX companies and CX departments feels that it's totally appropriate to take 24 hours to answer a customer. That's probably even considered pretty good in many places. Now, if you're somebody who have a problem, like you don't really feel very seen if it takes 24 hours. Like you want to call, you want to chat, and you just want to answer right away. And so depth is an indication for me of how much a customer feels seen. And I think it's hugely important that companies become much better at that. And the second area we call density, and that is how much does a customer feel that your brand, your company is part of the community they serve. And so classic examples are Patagonia or Peloton, where you wear the brand not just because that you like the product that they have, but also because you kind of feel it represents something about yourself. And the third one, which I think is going to be important in the AI world, is what I call durability, which is how much authenticity and authority do you have to offer another product to the customer that you're serving than the initial product that they bought from you. Now, imagine that I said we're building a hotel, like a Nike hotel. You would instantly probably get imagery in your brain of what that might be. But if I said, oh, and then we're building a Hilton shoe, you probably wouldn't. And so I believe in an age where AI will democratize people's ability to build products and services very fast. You'll need these three layers, the depth, the density, and the durability in order to keep growing.
It's such an interesting point that you raise. Like, how do you know what you can be? Because Nike can build a hotel that you would want to stay in. I would. I love exercising, but you wouldn't want to wear a Hilton shoe.
No, I
And it
think
seems
that's
obvious, but you're like, why not? But
hmm.
it's like a really interesting point that you raise.
But I think that is very much because that most companies define themselves of the utility they provide. They see themselves as a media company or a hotel company or whatever it can be. And I think we need to get away from that. We need to get all the way to the core of the relationship between the customer and the company. And that is to define basically who do we serve? And then what is the initial problem that we're trying to solve for them? But then after that, what are the different kind of like problem spaces that we're allowed to kind of offer different products and services within?
I'm preparing for a speech myself right now. And one of the research points I came across is that companies that are able to walk a mile in the customer's shoes really create so many more innovations like Ring doorbell, like Dyson, like Uber. These are all entrepreneurs that by walking a mile in the customer's shoes, seeing the gap in their own lives, created these products, whether it was Ring doorbell, where the entrepreneur couldn't get to the door in time because he was working in his garage, or Dyson, where the founder of Dyson was frustrated with the bags sucking up the vacuum, sucking up the dirt. It wasn't working properly. He happened to have a lot of research on cyclone technology. Or Uber. Founders of Uber were in Paris on a cold night and they couldn't get a taxi. And, in Paris in the winter, you can't feel your fingers outside. So walking a mile in the customer's shoes can lead to such innovation. Do you have any thoughts on how walking a mile in the customer's shoes can create even more ideas around what a company can be, like you mentioned?
Yeah, and I think there's a few different components of it. We call it customer founder fit, right? Because we think the customer founder fit is a much more important and interesting kind of a concept than a customer product as a product market fit, right? Because it's also very external. I think everything that I do is anchored in the people that I like to serve, which at Bark is
Or
dog
dogs,
owners.
the
But I
animal.
think for what I do have done with Prehype, where we build a lot of companies, is to serve entrepreneurs. And so for us, it's all a lot about figuring out what is the type of business that you want to build. And that I think is a question that we sometimes forget as entrepreneurs because we get so obsessed about this idea of pitching a story that kind of like sounds like it'll make a lot of money. But the reality is that you can make a lot of you. I think you'll have a tough time making a lot of money if you are involved in a business where you don't have intensity. And the only way you get intensity is that you really care about the people that you're solving a problem for. And so I always like turn a little bit in the head. I think walking, as you say, a mile in the customer's shoes is almost kind of like a necessity because I don't like, I've been doing BarkBox for 15 years and I still sit like and look at all the customer service reviews and I still kind of like get deeply engaged in the company. And I think the reason why I do that is because I'm partly a customer myself. Like my dog Molly deserved the best. And so therefore, like I am obsessed about coming up with new things and trying to make sure that we make the best products available as possible. And so I have a little slightly different kind of perspective on it because yeah, the way that I kind of live my life is like starting these things and helping people start these things. And I think for that reason, that element about walking a mile in people's shoes and customer shoes is so important.
Yeah, I love that you love your dog. I love my dogs too. We always talk about dogs when we talk. In your book, Me, My Customer, and AI, you talk about how AI powered platforms now handle operations that once required entire departments. What seems to be happening to me, and from what I hear, is that companies are just looking to save money with AI. So they're putting chatbots out to customers that hallucinate or half baked. What do you think, if you agree that what are the dangers of putting AI that's half baked to your customer and just kind of using it as an excuse to not have to create a human experience?
Well, I think the cases that you mentioned are very good examples. I think as a general kind of philosophy, if you use the technology to um, put a shield between you and your customers, I think that's bad. If you use it to try to amplify the way that you understand customer, that's good. And so I I think there's some use cases where a bot does the fine job, right? You need to change your password, or you want to, in our world, like figure out where your box is. You know, that's something that a bot will be able to answer you right away, and they'll be able to do a really good job at it. I think what you then obviously need to do is to make sure that the bot perform as much as possible with the DNA that you think is appropriate for your business and for the relationship that you're trying to create. So I think there's quite a lot of work that can go into even taking a bot from being like a simple, basic piece of technology to be something that you've humanified as much as possible. You give it a tone. You give it. You tell it when how to handle different situations. You definitely make sure that it knows when to put a human in the loop because the customer is saying something that's important. What I find where AI is interesting is when we can do all the things that we would like to do, but we don't do because they don't scale. So, for example, many people, when they start to get thousands of reviews or thousands of emails, they create systems that will have the user basically create a much more simplistic piece of feedback using a net promoter score, for example. Net promoter score is great because it's easy for us as a company owner to just like see what the number is. Now, obviously, the fidelity that you get out of like a comment is much better. And so now what you can do is, of course, taking like 10,000 comments and then put them through a model and then understand in detail what is going on with kind of all these comments. Or you can kind of have a conversation with all the comments where you can kind of say, hey, I have this thesis that this is going wrong. Is that right? And then the model will be able, on the behalf of these 10,000 people in their comments, be able to answer for you.
There's a great use case from Sephora that does exactly what you're talking about with the chatbot really serving as a survey tool, a conversational survey. And after they put out these conversational surveys to customers, they got way more feedback, like way more than they would ever get with a traditional survey. And then they were able to take all that data and create more relevant products and recommendations to customers through this conversational commerce chatbot.
Yeah, and I think the important part is obviously if you ask detailed questions, then you also have a responsibility of act on it, right? Like, I think what really kills a relationship is that you say, "Hey, tell me everything that you want to talk about. You tell me about," and then people, talk and talk and talk, and then you're like, yeah, whatever, and you move on. Like, that's just rude. And so I think, like a lot of these tools like now also come with a great deal of responsibility of actually listening and then putting these different kind of pieces of feedback into something that's actionable so that you can make your product better.
Yeah, and research shows that after sharing feedback, if the customers have a positive experience, they are way more likely to stay and
Hmm.
share that experience with friends. So I think we're just getting way more accurate on how we engage with customers, what we do with feedback, where does that feedback go, and just everything around how we manage data as well.
Yeah, and I think, and you were asking me earlier, like, what does a CXO do, like, tackle, how does a CXO kind of like see the world? And I think it's becoming just, and much more in, like, it was always very important, but I think now it's becoming even more important because a lot of the things that used to be very difficult is now becoming easier. It's easier to code, it's easier to create different types of marketing material, like all these things uh, easier. And so, what is difficult is to really get the insights into the humans, right? And I think there, a CXO will have a great opportunity to take all the kind of innate skills that they have and then turn them into something that's very valuable for their company.
And I think, like you said on the last podcast, you yourself have to play with the technology too in your own life. And that's how you'll get ideas for how to use it in all the use cases.
What's your favorite use of AI right now?
Oh gosh, I'm using it for everything. I just went car shopping, like kids' health things, like everything. Even my husband, every day he wakes up and he's like, why does my back hurt so bad when I sleep in my own bed, but when I go to hotels, my back doesn't hurt? And I said, Jacob, why don't you ask ChatGPT like common reasons for back pain and like maybe like ergonomic pillows? So, like, I literally am using it for everything. Obviously, I'm a huge content creator, and I hate to say this, but I used to have a ghostwriter. And I mean, she left the company before Chat GPT, but like even now, my assistant can help me create content, like even with the podcast,
Yeah.
like transcribing them, summarizing them. So many use cases.
We tried first to write the book with ChatGPT and had a miserable fail. Like, we thought, like, it's really so
Yeah,
advanced
you said
now.
that in the book.
Yeah, in the book we talk about like how we had all these white papers and we were like, hey, maybe we could just use ChatGPT. But it felt a little bit like, like a meal, like a McDonald's meal, right? It was food, but it didn't really feel it had any healthy calories. And so we ended up having to write it, Nicholas and I, and our ghostwriter Skylar.
I actually forgot one use case our best friend just turned 40 and he had this huge Las Vegas themed birthday party at his house and his wife did not know what to wear till the last minute. And so she was just going to wear some frumpy dress. So I said, no, let me help you with AI. So I asked ChatGPT to find me like a Las Vegas red cocktail dress. ChatGPT gave me the most beautiful dress no one else could find. It fit her perfect. She was the belle of the ball in her red Las Vegas cocktail dress.
That's
And
amazing.
everyone was amazed. You found this with AI? I'm like, yeah, AI is my stylist now.
It's incredible how few people that is like how many people that are still not using it really.
Right? I think
Yeah.
why? They don't know. They're
I
scared.
think it's, I mean, like, I'm old enough to remember when like the internet rolled and like people were still kind of like printing out like emails because that's what they always done, right? I think with AI, it's a super new technology. Like, it's only really been around for a few years. And so, people just need a little bit of time, I think.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's still new and it's such an exciting time. I'm so glad you're still in the game and you didn't just retire to the Alps to
I was
undermat or something.
I had a greenhouse that I spent a lot of time on, and then I figure out, found out pretty fast that I do not have very green fingers, and I needed something new. And then I think, honestly, I remember when I saw the internet for the first time, because I'm old enough to be able to kind of like have experienced that. And I think when I saw the first browser, I was like, okay, I kind of know what's going to happen now. Like we
Oh,
have now
really?
10, 20 years of just having to kind of build into this window. And then in about, I think 2020, I got access to OpenAI, and they had something called the playground, and it was basically just a text window, and you could write something, and then you could press a button, and then it will continue your writing. So if you had put in like Henrik is very, and then you pressed it, it'll just start to write it. And I remember I was like, holy moly, this is like the internet all over again. It's going to be wild. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I got obsessed about this kind of idea of atomizing my different workflows and then figuring out if I could put autonomous agents in there instead.
I think all my listeners and viewers right now really would love to see like what you're talking about because a lot of us like we kind of know what you're talking about, but you're
Well,
very
I think
advanced with this.
I think it's just like trying to think more in systems, right? Like if you do something more than three times, then you probably should just spend 2 minutes thinking, is there a way that I can kind of use technology to make this easier for me the fourth time? And
Hmm.
so I have just done that now for 5 years. And so I'm becoming increasingly good at just kind of taking that thing and like, yeah, coming up with a system for it. And I guess like because such a nerd and I spend a decent amount of time just trying all these new technologies, every time I then have a problem, I go like, oh, somebody wants to make a song. Oh, we should probably use Juno for that. Or somebody needs to make what have I done this week? Somebody had to make an inventory system. Well, Airtable can probably do that. And so like increasingly, I just know what system to go to and then
That's
bytecode something from
amazing.
there.
That's amazing. But you're still optimistic that AI won't completely destroy the idea of work.
Well, I I think that the best way to predict the future is to make it. Like that's probably somebody said. And I think if that's true, then I want to live in a positive world. And so what I can do to try to contribute to that is to try to come up with things that, has a positive impact. And so I think I'm probably as scared as everybody else that we'll all just kind of be, completely marginalized by technology and society will have all these issues. And there's going to be a few people that have like the companies that we all work for. But I don't think it has to go that way. I think that if you look at the backbone of the American society, it's made by mom and pop stores that cares a lot for a community and are really good at creating products for them, right? Or a service for them, which often was kind of a store. I think with AI now, that ability is available for everybody. And if I can help make that easier for people to get going on, then that's something that could be a good thing. So instead of having, as some people talk about, these one people unicorns, like one person having $1 billion company, maybe we could have 1 million people have $1 million company, right? And that would be pretty awesome. And so I do think there's risk with all new technologies, but I do think that there's a lot of very good and kind and thoughtful people out there that like to live in a good world. And I think those of us who kind of like aspire to be part of that crew, we're trying to come up with stuff that kind of move the world that way.
I love that. I think that's actually a perfect note to kind of wrap up on. I mean, you have done so many cool things. Flying dogs in airplanes, I think, is amazing. And I can't wait to see what you do next with AI. I'm sure you have stuff in the pipeline.
I have a few things in the pipeline.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing my show again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I always learn a lot and just always fun to chat.
I appreciate it so much. I hope I can invite it back a fourth time.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody listening and watching, pick up a copy of Henrik's new book, Me, My Customer, and AI, wherever books are sold. Thank you for watching. Until next time. Please don't forget to like or subscribe and follow my social content on other platforms where I post content daily, including X, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, and more.